Okay, and back. And it's time to spend an hour with Half-Past Human and one of the two ringmasters of that three-ring. It's more than three-ring. It's an amazing circus. I hope all of you go and take a look at the page, and I hope many of you will subscribe to it. It's the most unique research, I guess it's a good enough word, you're going to find anywhere. Clif High is back with us tonight. He and his partner George Ure have really shaken up a lot of people. And, Clif, how is your radio career going these days since we launched you here?
Pretty well. It's very time-consuming.
They say
so I don't know if it's good that it's good, so to speak.
They say the kid has a future. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. A lot of blather out and about. Let's hope some of it's meaningful.
All right. The big story is the latest massacre of human beings by human beings. When did the data begin to show something big was coming in the Israeli paradigm, as it were?
That's been ongoing for a couple of years, and it's been one of these process things as opposed to an event. And so for our work, the linguistics have a tendency to repeat. And we've come up with a formula and a new postulate. And the postulate says basically that there are some kinds of linguistics that operate at multiple levels and continue for a period of time in some strength within a particular area. So, for instance, we had some minor component of that in that we saw the linguistics for twin earthquakes repeatedly in the various different areas, and it's still showing up.
Right.
Okay, so for the Israeli thing, we've had the Israeli mistake, we called it, because mistake is identified within our data at multiple levels within this. Mistake in judgment, mistake in strategy, mistake in tactics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's what arrogance and supremacy will get you.
I was going to say. Arrogance certainly would lead to it. And it's coming up pretty much in March, I think, that we'll see the next round or backlash or response.
Well, they're right now militarily at kind of a point. They've completed the first part. They've surrounded Gaza City. Do they go in and completely turn it into Fallujah 2, or do they stop and play games? If they stop, then they clearly are going to show to some of their hardcore backers a measure of lack of resolve. Let's be diplomatic about it. The idea is to obviously liquidate these people or disperse, destroy, and otherwise reduce them to virtually nothing. That's right.
Right, and it's really there's just huge levels of interconnectedness in this and our level of work on this. So the Israeli mistake is a process that actually began to heat up with the attacks in Ossetia when certain levels of Israeli documentation were seized by the Russians. Well,
they were obviously pulling strings there with the tie eater, no doubt about it.
Yeah, exactly so. And the theory advanced, which shows some credibility, was that if Ossetia had been able to be 100% Georgian, the Israelis could have used it as an air base to launch attacks on Iran and not have to overfly Iraq.
That's right.
Thus depriving Iran of the ability or the excuse for really raining hell down on our guys in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so it was sort of a grand game, 18th century kind of thinking, which backfired because Putin was waiting, let them build up their forces, swooped in, and kicked butt. Now, the current level of the mistake we see as bringing up the language that we've had for about 9 months to a year around the word brutality, where an excessive level of force beyond all measure or any reason whatsoever would induce such horror. And we're seeing it played out now that we would have Israel become a pariah state. And this language has been out there since maybe 8 or 9 months. You'd have to ask George Ure about that explicitly because he keeps track of that.
Well, this is all well and good, and the fact of the matter is Israel has been a pariah state since it was conceived.
Yes, but we're talking a different meaning in here. Well, let's be real clear about the linguistics. We're talking about an active level of pariah state such that international boycotts will soon spread all over the planet for all things Israeli.
You mean anti-Semitism will run rampant?
No one's against the Semitic peoples, which
is
the Arabs and the Palestinians. These are just against the Zionists.
Here's the wild part. The anti-Semitic aspect of the butchery going on right now is being perpetrated against the Semitic peoples involved, the Palestinians.
Correct.
Most of the Israelis, in fact, all the Israelis who run the country, are white-skinned Khazars. They're not Semitic
Israel. That sure seems the case, yes.
Yeah.
They're not, in fact, Semitic.
No.
And the dispersion of the diaspora of the Jewish peoples throughout history has pretty much blended out a lot of the original genomes in any event.
Correct. Yep. Okay.
And also then we also have to deal with one other level of this, and that is that incompetence is being shown within our data sets and has for at least the last year around the whole strategic initiative planned by the Zionists at this particular time. And it really came down to, within the descriptors, to not only bad strategy, but poor implementation of a bad strategy.
Well, look what happened in southern Lebanon, I guess.
And we're expecting something worse in late February through March.
Huh. Here's a little tiny bit. The latest report, the Alta report, is just out. Part 1 is out.
Part 0.
Excuse me, Part 0. Is that something to do with your computer background that you?
That has to do both with the fact that I'm a programmer, and all programmers count from zero. Most engineers. But also, Part 0 is a bridge, if you will. It takes the last of the longer-term data from the previous series and blends it with the immediacy data of this existing series.
I thought so. Okay. All right. Now, here's a little quote from the part we're talking about. These subset ratios are seeming to support the idea within the Israeli mistake language that points to the rejection of Israel by the global populace as a criminal state nation. And that's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Pariah.
A pariah, as shunned. We get the word shunned, Coventry, boycott, default, rejection, repudiation. Deals will be broken. Countries will go into alliances that are triangular, curiously, because of the triangle being one of the key symbols of the Zionist Republic in any event. But triangle alliances like Russia, Brazil, and India, for instance, may get to the point where they reject doing business with Israel at any level of the financial industry.
And as you listening know, there already is, some of you do, an alliance between those three countries.
Yeah, exactly so. And there'll be others, and it'll actually spread to near Anglo support countries like Belgium, for instance. Not Brussels as in the EU, but the Belgian populace is shown to be very anti-Zionist in this. And they'll form another alliance. A lot of it
in France, too.
Exactly, yeah. So the pariah state's coming around not soon enough for the suffering of the Semitic peoples there that are being attacked by this military machine.
We don't call this war either, folks.
No, this is not. No. This isn't even really combat or contention. This I don't know, last night I was able to get a journalist on who was living in the middle of Gaza City, and he described a cloud of dust from the obvious depleted uranium rounds being lobbed into civilian populated areas that was 2 kilometers wide in diameter. And that's death, folks. All this DU, and a lot of it, as you know, Clif, the Zionists don't care who they sacrifice. It doesn't matter to them. And this goes in my mind to the whole idea of what drives these people. And I start looking at the proffered explanations of the Holocaust, and then of the 1947 war and the 1967 Yom Kippur War, et cetera, and I think no, that really is not it. This, my ancestor killed your ancestor, or vice versa, sort of thing, does not drive the kind of madness we're seeing now. This is obviously being issued by some level of intelligence that has a very specific goal, and so you start asking yourself, well, what could the goals be? And it really leads to a really strange line of thought. With your previous guest there, I was sort of tying it all together.
Now, this is interesting. We're going to pop into a break here, so let's hold that.
Sure.
Get to that in just a minute. David Icke was on last night, and he said something that I've discussed over the years, infrequently, but we've discussed it, that evil revels, embraces, and is euphoric over mass slaughter. It likes it, at least certain kinds of evil.
may require it. It may be necessary.
Okay, I'm getting to that, but that's fine. It is a rudimentary component of what keeps the evil intact and thriving, and that is the death and suffering, agony and torment of other human beings. Lesser human beings, of course, not the chosen.
Yes, it's always lesser, no matter what age.
Hey, all right, we'll be right back with Clif of Half Past Human in just a couple of minutes. Okay, back with Clif High of HalfPastHuman.com. Our regards to George Ure, who is probably out there listening somewhere. And we have all kinds of things going on. Now, the big question in many people's minds is this current mini Holocaust, of course it's a maxi if you're one of the dead,
exactly. Yeah.
This latest of the Zionist state over God knows how many decades now, 6, 7, I don't know, going to lead to something wider. Does the data suggest this will be used as a pretext to false flag and trap Iran into a war? Do we see something else in the cards?
At this point, the immediacy data for the current run doesn't show anything like that. We've had some indicators that, of course, Iran will continue to be a hot spot linguistically, but there's also real-world concerns on the part of anybody foolish enough to attack Iran, and that is the association with the Russians and the fact that the Russians have been working on a whole new class of weapons, which are quietly spreading throughout the world. And these are very, very, very effective. In fact, almost unstoppable. And they start from the sunburst missiles and go into some rather esoteric items that are often being sold under the guise of anti-missile systems and other
Well, the Sunburn has really been supplanted with the Yakonts, and it's a far smaller, far more mobile. The Sunburn's a big weapon. But you're right, the Russians have never slowed, even under the Soviet yoke, in their research and development. They never stopped, they never will. They're very smart. They know that the only way to fight a war in this world now is not to maintain a 1 million-man army and put troops in how many countries now?
150